In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. I am not a financial advisor. This video is not financial advice. It's for merely entertainment purposes only. I am making this video for friends and family that they may trust in divine providence and take all reasonable action within their power to prepare themselves for what comes. And one of the things is to get your money out of the banks. The fact is, war has been declared on you. Doesn't matter if you want to go to war or not, but there is a war against you, and it is spiritual and temporal. And the time to take action is right now. The first thing to do is accept God's divine providence, and I'll actually cover that more later in the video. And there's really nothing really in this video you should do until you first address the trustful surrender to divine providence. And there's a particular book. It takes about 2 hours to go through, and before you do any other action step, do that first. It's only 2 hours. Before I get into the bulk of it, I keep in mind that the Lord said that I am who am, and with that, I have to say that I am who am not. So if I reference, or when I reference, things I've said in the past that have come true, or trends that I notice, it's not by any of my own doing. It's just, for some reason, God helped me to notice them before they happened. And that's that. So with that, I would like to say that what I'm about to say is not merely something that, like, I was sitting in happen to be in a conspiracy kind of mood. There's actually lots of things that I see that things are pointing in a certain direction. And so I feel compelled and like an obligation to share them with friends and family. In 2016, when Bitcoin was $959, I did put out an article saying that it would go to 10,000. And it did. And more recently, this is probably the last one I'll bring up, but more recently I've been posting in the last few years about central bank digital currencies. Most people never even heard of that and don't know what that means, but I've been talking about central bank digital currencies, and we saw just last month, June 2022, Jerome Powell, Fed chairman, openly discussed the Federal Reserve's white paper for their own central bank digital currency.
Looking forward, rapid changes are taking place in the global monetary system that may affect the international role of the dollar in the future. Most major economies already have, or are in the process of developing, instant 24/7 payments. Our own FedNow service will be coming online in 2023. And in light of the tremendous growth in crypto assets and stablecoins, we are examining whether a U.S. central bank digital currency would improve upon what is an already safe and efficient domestic payment system. As our white paper on this topic notes, a U.S. CBDC could also potentially help maintain the dollar's international standing.
The stuff is coming, and you guys got to get ready for it before it gets here. With that, the Fed was running loose monetary policy. Well, it's kind of like why they exist, right? They say that they're supposed to have 2%. Their target's 2% inflation, but why do you even have to have any inflation? It's because we have a debt-based system, and it constantly needs to be more debt needs to be created to keep it going, okay? So they'll overdo things and underdo things, always trying to micromanage everything instead of letting actual markets work. And back in the last several months and year, you would see them saying, "Oh, the inflation is transitory. It's not really a thing." And then it was, "Oh, well, there might be some inflation, but it's good." And then it was, "Well, it's Putin's fault. Putin did it." And then it's, okay, well, maybe there's inflation now. And then it became, well, now we have to raise interest rates because inflation's out of control. Well, it turns out the inflation is, almost 9%. It's over 8%, and that's just what they claim. But if you use the old 1980s metrics, inflation's double that. It's probably 16 or 17%. But if you told regular people that inflation is 16 or 17%, they would lose their confidence in the dollar pretty quick, and there might be some problems out there more than is now, but I think they're not quite ready to get to that point yet, so they're saying it's 8 to 9%. Okay. And so the fringes of the internet and the fringes of society were talking about the coming inflationary problems, all the whilst the experts denied them, right? So this is kind of where this little talk's going. The debt-based system needs to create more debt to keep it from collapsing. It's a system based on usury, and it's fraudulent. The debt can't be supported, and it's going to collapse. And this is a system in which we've had the socialization of risk, but the privatization of gains, where you have certain, if you remember in the great financial crisis, the too big to fail companies, right? They could take all the risk and make all these bets that you wouldn't be able to do sitting at home, but when they lost them, they were bailed out. Okay? And then you come more recent day, you had the repo market when the Fed stepped in and did some trickery, and coincidentally, that was September 2019, and not long after that, we had the COVID pandemic. That was into January and February of 2020. Also, what happened prior to that, which is not really, it's kind of related, but not really related, is you had false Pope Bergoglio at the Vatican putting up the Pachamama as their idol worship, and it's not a coincidence that the world started going to after all that stuff happened on. So we have to remember that the central bankers are not the conductors of stability, but they are the architects of volatility. Okay, the only way the system goes right now is through a hyper debt money creation. You see, whenever they're not creating and adding and providing liquidity, markets start teetering, and they haven't even collapsed yet. But wait till they collapse, right? So as they raise the interest rates, cost of servicing this debt, it becomes more expensive, and you start seeing this in other countries like Japan, where the yen has been falling pretty hard against the dollar, because what happens is these other countries have to service the debt they have in dollars, so they have to, how are they going to do it? They sometimes have to inflate their own currency to make the debt payments, right? Well, this is going to be like a reverse domino effect, where you have all the dominoes on the outside, and then all are going to, like, one by one fall from the outside in. The U.S. dollar will probably be one of the last fiats to fall, but it's just this is what we're getting prepared for. So will the Fed overshoot and create a deflation or a depression sooner than later? Or is that even their goal? That's what we're going to find out. But however they're going to take it, what always happens is the people on the inside of the club make it more, get richer, and people outside get driven more and more into the ground, right? And it's kind of like, I'm going to talk a little bit about gold and silver later, and it takes, like right now, there's almost 400 paper ounces of silver for every true ounce of silver, right? It's just a fraudulent system where they can manipulate things on the paper market. But as we're going to see the cracks starting to crumble in the old system, and they're going to have to bring on the new system, things like that are going to start coming truer to their true value, right? So whether we have an outright default or hyperinflation, it's coming. And as I talked about before, the CPI that they say is just over 8%, but is really more than that. It's that confidence that they're still hanging on to. When the confidence starts to fall, then there's really no control, and that's probably what they're going for. A recent example, I'll say, in the cryptocurrency market was one called Terra Luna. I think it was as high as number 7 in market capitalization, which means if you added all the money together in the crypto, it was the 7th biggest crypto, right? Well, there was a algorithmic coin that was tied to another coin that was a stable coin, so it was supposed to hold parity with the US dollar, but once that parity dropped down, it may have been attacked in a vulnerable state or whatever, but they started to issue more Luna, because the way it worked was whenever they issued more Luna to bring the peg back up, so people would have the incentive to take advantage of the arbitrage, right, and get the peg back up by selling the Luna. But the sell pressure became so much on Luna that it spiraled out of control. It's a death spiral. It's when all confidence is lost. That's what's going to happen to almost everybody's sovereign currency. Okay, this is the end game that is coming. And if you want to, that's a case study in hyperinflation that's been very recent. Is Luna? Look it up. If you want to go back to the pandemic, they've kind of been conditioning people to accept this cashless society. If you remember going to different stores, they would say, "Oh, we're in a shortage of cash." It's conditioning people to accept only the plastic card, right? With the plastic card right now, we'll have a Visa or MasterCard on it, but eventually you're going to have a central bank digital ledger. It'll be really nice and surveillance oriented. So what happened in the pandemic, right? They shut down the mom and pop shops, but the Amazon and the Walmarts of the world were able to keep going. They captured the market share of the smaller companies. That's part of what's going on as a conglomeration. Like, how many more companies did BlackRock buy? And we're not just talking real estate in the housing market, but actual acquiring more and more companies. They have market share of, well, go look at BlackRock and look at all the companies they own, or not all of, but they own a portion of. All of the companies they own a portion of. And then you can look at those companies and see which ones were putting mask mandates and vax mandates on their employees and stuff like that, right? And then you can see how it all is being uh, conglomerated into this big dystopian thing, right? And so that's it. And another thing you can look at during the pandemic was the 2.2 trillion stimulus package, right? In which you got $1,200 in America, American citizens, $1,200. Way to go! Except if you divide 2.2 trillion divided by 330 million, it comes to $6,666, which means per person, $5,466 went to somebody else. Meanwhile, you're paying right now for the inflation that was helped in part by, right? So somebody else got that $5,466 per person, but you're still owed, or you're still the one that's going to pay in that lack of purchasing power that it caused, right? And so stuff like that goes on and on and on. That's just one example, right? They then pressured the population into getting an injection. And even the most ardent believers would have to admit that there was no 5 to 10 year study at all about the safety or efficacy of such injection. And what does that say that these people really think about you, right? And then even recently, they made a ministry of truth. If you bring such things up, you, well, yeah, we'll leave it at that. I don't think the first go around didn't last very long, but they will try again. Don't doubt it. So the next steps, right? Like, what is coming? Well, things are not going to get better. They're going to double down. They're going to double down. The Federal Reserve is not here to help you or to make the situation better for you. They are a cartel. They are a government-sanctioned cartel, and their job is to help those who profit off the cartel to profit more and gain more and control more, right? They're the ones at the helm of the great polarizing wealth event. Okay, these are when the currencies are going to be collapsing, and this is when all the you're gonna see like in Sri Lanka right now, complete societal breakdown. Okay, this is going to be in many more places. Okay, and because society was so compliant on the pandemic, you're going to have to get ready for future lockdowns, and they're going to push and see what they can get through again. And you're going to have work from home orders, whether in they'll limit the non-essential travel like they did before, and you'll have fuel limits. And I'm not even sure that it's going to be because of another pandemic or a continuation of the COVID. It very well could be, but they might do an energy crisis and say, "Oh, we don't have enough fuel. We have to ration the fuel now," or "Oh, Russia did this, so we have to do this now." There's going to be rationing and price controls, right? So what you got to do is get ready at home and think of the stuff that you and your family consume over a course of how many uh, maybe like 3 to 6 months as a basic starting, and then you can go from there, right? Because you want to have this stuff accessible because you may not even be able to access it at any price. Okay, so the standard of living in the States and many other places will decrease in the times ahead. The system that we are currently in is meant to hollow out the lower and middle class, and it's to siphon capital up into the uber rich, who will only get richer, right? And the system is nearing the end, and it's primed for the great final plundering, and that will be the great ushering into the new central bank digital currency system in which everything will be digitized. Everything will be digitized, right? You may be thinking, oh, well, that's easy. Then I don't have to like have a easy pass when I go in the turnpike. It'll just take it out easily. I don't have to worry about depositing my check. My employer will put it right into my central bank digital ledger, and it'll be great, right? And it's like, okay, and then with that comes your, oh, sir, you had too many meat packages bought this month. We're going to cut you off. Or that was a bad social media post you had. You're going to be cut off. Like, that's where it's going to eventually go, right? But one step at a time here. So anyway, the point is that whenever they get everything digitized and all of that stuff, and you see the BlackRocks gaining more and more shares of companies, the whole point is that the technocratic communists of the world are supposed to own it all, and they're going to try to own it all so that you will own nothing and be happy. But really, they'll be the only ones happy. More recently, in the last few months, you've seen the stoking of the World War III with Russia, and everything the West has done. Well, they cut Russia off from the SWIFT, which I don't know whose idea that was, but Russia's obviously been preparing for such things because in 2014, when the U.S. and allies were playing around in Ukraine in 2014, and they ousted the president there, Russia started in 2014 to acquire and build their gold reserves, okay? Because what the U.S. has done more and more recently is they've weaponized the dollar. So Russia and China and the like are getting prepared for this bifurcated world where the West is trying to become more dystopian, and they see this as a time where they can take advantage of it, right? Like all these systems are spiraling out of control near their end. So the West is knowing that, and they're getting ready for the new system. But as this is going on, Russia and China have already been making strides to not be a part of it. Or if they are going to be a part of something like it, it's going to be by their own choosing. Okay, so they'll have their own. If they want to, they'll do their own. I'm sure like no place is going to be totally free. Every place is going to have its problems. So maybe they'll take care of some of the surveillance stuff on their own end, right? But they've obviously been looking to be prepared for the U.S. system exit, or the system where the U.S. has had hegemony over everything else. You know, the U.S. dollar reserve currency status kind of thing, right? And so they now have a ruble that is quasi backed by gold and oil or some tied to that in some way, whereas these fiat currencies are literally just dead instruments and waiting to collapse, really. So as we have it, the same people that ran the pandemic, they will run the energy demic or the climate demic, or maybe they'll be the ones that will be really behind the Russia hack that's going to come, or whatever comes of World War III that they no doubt are trying to get going, because these collapses of war will get everybody all patriotic again and everything, right? And then they'll be behind the Russophobia demic. And anyway, the whole thing is to steer you into a system, and they'll be there to save the day when everything goes to garbage. They'll come and save the day. And the thing is, they're supposed to make it so bad, whichever one of these tools they have to make the next worst thing, right? They want to make it so bad that you not only will accept their totalitarian surveillance system, but you will beg them for it because you're going to need to eat, and you're going to need this, and you're going to need that, right? So whatever comes has to be worse than the COVID stuff in severity, right? And at that time, the hardship will present a fork for many people, everybody really. It'll be will it be like a society that stands on principle, right, and takes the narrow road and be like, well, we've been given these hardships, we're going to turn to God and make it out of it, right? Or is it going to be part of society that's going to kiss the ring of the technocratic communists and take the broad road of the universal basic income in there, get their monthly check? If only they keep up to date, that kind of thing is very well what's going to come. And if you judge by the immorality in society this far, any hardship is not hardship enough. Like, I don't even have to get into it, at least not in this video. But so it seems that it won't be society that can be saved, but only certain individuals, right? I think it's lost for society. We live in a place where the unvaxxed and the truth tellers have become the enemy of the state, and that's just where we are. So what are we going to do right now, right? Well, if you have pensions, check it out. Like, I'm sure your pensions may be loaded with corporate and government debt. And what happens to those in a debt collapse, right? Are you going to lose everything? Or do you have access to the money you do have? Basically, what we're going to get to a point, which we already have been in recently, was you have to do the opposite of everything they tell you to do, okay? They hate you, and they have waged a war on you, right? You got to get cash into your possession, not in the bank. It's like in crypto, we say, not your keys, not your crypto, right? If you don't have the private keys and it's on some third party, well, that third party could shut down or something could happen to, and you're out. You don't have your money anymore. It's gone. That could happen with a bank. And back to the Terra Luna example I mentioned earlier. After it collapsed, what did they do? They said, oh, man, we feel so bad for our investors. What are we going to do? I know, we will issue Luna 2.0. So they issued another Luna and took whatever amount the people had and did a revaluation and gave them the new Luna, right? Well, that's what's going to happen with the central bank digital currencies if they have some kind of banking hack or something like that, right? They're going to say, oh, well, you had this much, we're going to give you this much. And they might even revalue it higher. So all the people out there will say, wow, I had X amount thousands and now I have this many thousands. And they'll just be, that's literally will be an overnight inflation. I guess people won't realize it at the time unless they're really paying attention, right? So get your cash in your possession, right? Same, and then even have gold in your possession. And I gotta say again, this isn't about being greedy. This is about preserving what you have. If you're doing stuff to get rich and you're doing stuff for the love of money, that's wrong video, right? Go somewhere else, because this is about preserving what you have, and God willing, you'll be able to take care of your family and your family's families, right? Like this is your time to take action and be a leader and help people, not acquire things for the point of acquiring things. Okay, so you do it for defense and your preservation of what you have. If you leave it on the bank, be prepared to lose all of it. Okay, and with this, those who did not prepare will be used. They will be turned against you, much like you saw in the grocery stores when people would not wear a mask and wouldn't do this and wouldn't do that. You had the other people who were shouting at them in the grocery store, "Wear your mask, you're hurting me," right? Like, it's ridiculous, right? But that's going to be like cranked up, right? Because there's going to be some unprepared people, and they're going to want to take it out on somebody. It'll be your fault because you took action and you're preventing me from, right? And it'll be all of that, and they will play on that like you can't believe. So that's what's coming. And I mean, even in most recent times, this whole debt crisis is being ignored, and they're getting like wedge issues over and over. And even most recently, at the overturn of Roe v. Wade, right? I mean, first of all, I don't know why people are in the street like bragging about their abortion. I mean, killing babies. It's like, hey, I murdered 20 of my babies. Like, you should be in a basement, like hiding from that. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. But those kind of issues are always brought up to the surface so that people don't focus on the people that have really, really twisted the knife into your well-being and your finances and your life and all of this. And then you could even go into the morality, because much of it has been stoked by the media and people watch their TV and their shows, and it's just okay. I guess. So anyway, yes, people will turn on you, and the dividing is meant to distract, to keep people away from what's actually going on, okay? And so we can look, talking again with the gold. I know I'm jumping around. It's like impossible for me to hit everything. And going back to the gold, there will be some problems with doing this, right? Because you'll have a target on your back, I'm sure, one way or another. These people that are unprepared will maybe try to rat on you or something like that. But you can look how they're the powers that be, right? The travel restrictions they had during COVID. That's the same. There's the same travel restrictions for your money. You know, like if you move a certain amount of money, you get questioned on it. You can't take only so much amount of gold on an airplane with you. You have to declare it, right? They are keeping an inventory. It seems to be that there's an inventory of each country, and they're like, oh, well, they have this many ounces because this is what we know we had, and this many left, and this many didn't leave. So we know roughly we have this much. It's probably confiscatable if we really, really want it, right? And you saw what FDR did in 1933 when they issued and made holding gold illegal. And what did they do after they got the gold? They revalued it, and everybody lost their purchasing power. So you're gonna have to make a decision right now that you're not going to be swindled out of it, and how you're going to address that. I don't know if you're going to hide it in several locations, or that's probably going to be something you have to research on your own. I'm not telling anybody to do anything illegal in this video. I want to make sure everybody understands that food rations are coming, capital controls are coming, and that gold or silver, which you set aside somewhere, may be what gets you your family's meal instead of having to give something up to get it. Okay? So what are we going to do? Action steps. Number 1, get right with God and resign yourself to his divine providence. I will put the link in the description to, there's an audio. You can listen to an audiobook of the book. It's only 2 hours, or you can read it yourself. I'll put a PDF on. And do that before you do anything, okay? Do that before anything. That way you'll be approaching all the other steps with the frame of mind that I intend it to be, right? So get your money out of the banks. You have to have your finances be accessible, right? You have to stand up and be prepared. Stand up for what's right and get prepared, right? Be a leader in your area. You will have other people near you that feel and know and are like-minded, right? Get a local network together, right? You're not going to make it on your own. So the more people you can get together, the stronger you guys will be. and the more like different people have different strengths and strategies and expertise and can help other people in this where other people are lacking, and some people have something that other people need, and you guys can protect each other whenever looters will be coming, because you're gonna have what you're gonna have to hide what you have. Don't advertise it, obviously. So you're gonna need to secure your local food sources, have your networks ready, and you got to do this immediately as soon as you read the Divine Providence book. You got to be self-reliant. Like, ask yourself, do you have food? Do you have water? Do you have medications you need? Do you have herbs that you need? Do you have and even essential oils, something like that? Do you have these things so that if you don't have access to get them again, you are covered for some time, right? These are things you got to ask yourself right now because time is running out. Do you have access to your own cash? Okay, gold, silver, maybe even Monero if you want digital. Uh, Personally, my favorite is silver, and that's for indefinitely until the ratio comes back down and maybe even overshoots the from the historical levels, which is about 16. Or if you went to the U.S. currency, it used to be 10 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. Okay, so you got to determine your principles right now, and you got to ask yourself the questions right now, like what are you willing to give up, right? Are you gonna kneel at the black altar and take as many injections as you want to? Are you going to get the chip in you if you want, if that's what it takes to get your allotted pittance for the month, right? Or are you just going to try to opt out of the system now and then be prepared for whatever comes your way because of it? It's time to make these choices. The martyrs of old had to do certain death just for not dropping a pinch of incense to a false god. So we at least have better odds than that currently. And so these are questions you got to ask yourself right now and get prepared right now. In closing, I would like to read a few excerpts from the Divine Providence book, and so I'll go with that now. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. As it has pleased the Lord, so it is done. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Whatever the excuse for the persecution you may be made to suffer, and especially if it is because of your religion, accept it all without hesitation as coming from the understanding and paternal hand of your Father who is in heaven. So we, with this divine providence, whatever comes our way, it's either going to be to prove us, to convert us, or as a penance for sin we have committed. So nobody does anything to us. It's just everything is permissioned by God, and we, take reasonable action based on what happens, right? So continuing another part, but it is not enough just not to complain, okay? We ought to be content with what we have been given and desire nothing more. What we have is sufficient because God has judged it so. Just as a workman uses a shape and size of tool best suited for the job in hand, so God gives us those qualities which are in accordance with the designs he has for us. We ought to conform to the will of God in sickness and infirmity and wish for what he sends us, both at the time it comes and for the time it lasts, with all the circumstances attending it, without wishing for one of them to be changed. And at the same time, do all that is reasonable in our power to get well again, because God wishes it so. For my part, says St. Alphonsus, I call illness the touchstone of the Spirit, for it is then that the true virtue of a man is discovered. And that's why I led the video off with that we're going to do everything in our power to address all that is coming. And then what happens, happens. We just trust in divine providence. You don't want to be sitting home and then like this and this happens to you and you're like, I could have done something. I didn't do anything for 2 more months and this 2 months nothing happened and then it happened. Or 2 years went by and I didn't do anything. I thought this was not going to happen and here I am, I did nothing, right? You don't want to be in that situation. And then if you are in that situation and it was God's will that you were, for whatever reason. So another part is, it is clear from this that whatever the manner of our life, we should always accept adversity joyfully, right? We are leading a good life. If we are leading a good life, adversity purifies us, makes us better, and enables us to acquire greater merit. If our life is sinful, it serves to bring us to repentance and obliges us to become good, okay? So we got to, trust in divine providence, take action now, and you will not be a victim of the fear or onslaught that they are going to have ready for you, okay? No matter how bad it gets. They cannot take your soul. They can only take your soul if you allow them. And in this fight, just be of good cheer. You know, do everything you can and be of good cheer. And what happens, it's God's will. That's all I got. God bless.